Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce Anurag Mitra. Anurag Mitra is currently an undergraduate at Harvard University, USA, pursuing computer science and electrical engineering. Presently, he is also cross-registered in MIT. Now, for your information, Anurag got 100% scholarship from Harvard. And so far, my knowledge, I don't know about India, but in East India, he's the only person in that particular year to achieve the same. He was also a brilliant swimmer. Uh, he has got many record in 50 and 100-meter breaststroke at state level. He got a national gold in breaststroke, which helped him to being part of the Indian team for Asian age group in 2015. He has also created some age group record in Malaysian meets where we used to go before. So I will hand over to Anurag. But before we start, let me start with some question. Anurag, hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good morning or good afternoon, Anurag. Sorry, this afternoon. So
Good
I'd
afternoon,
like
sir.
to start with asking you the journey of yours, from the basic level till this level of Harvard, both in study and in swimming. Would you like to explain that?
Okay, sure, sir. Before I begin with the question, I just like to wish good afternoon to each and every one of you who've joined this call. I'm very grateful to Partho sir also for giving me this opportunity to talk to the budding swimmers of our country. And since I've been associated with this swimming community for such a long time, since precisely class 3 or 4, I've always looked ways for giving back to the community. And so, if this talk of mine helps you or inspires you even a little bit, I'll consider it a win for me. Uh, and so, let me get back to the question about my journey. And I think it's best to just begin from the starting when I started swimming. So, I think the first impulse which my mother felt when I was in class 3 was when she saw me in the school swimming pool, flailing my arms around, trying to stay afloat. And I think, as a motherly instinct, she saw that as a serious, life-threatening risk that I was so at unease at this in this watery environment. And I think that brought me to the gates of the Indian Life Saving Society, which is better known as Anderson Club in Kolkata. It's a very iconic club where most of the swimmers have learned how to swim, and there began my journey. So the first few days were not very pleasant, as I'm sure is with many of you who started swimming, because I used to make up excuses of stomach aches or fevers because I didn't want to go because I saw it as a life-threatening risk because they used to throw me from the deep side and then expect me to swim for some reason, even without knowing. So there began the excuses, and then over time, my mom and dad used to push me, and then over time, I became better. And I think as I became better and better, as I was able to float, I guess, I found my own motivation to just go to swim and keep my body fit. And from there, I got inducted into what they call their advanced program. So in the advanced program, the people who are usually fast swimmers get inducted. But in the beginning, we didn't have a particular goal. So, and I think it'll be helpful to just share a few pictures of ILSS to kind of show you where I used to swim. So I'm just going to present my screen. Uh, One sec. Can you see this? Sir, can you
Yeah, yeah,
confirm
we
if
can see that. Anurag.
so this was the main this was called Anderson Club, and we had a small swimming pool, and this is the place where I initially learned how to swim. But for advanced swimmers, obviously you need a 50-meter pool and you need a larger area. And since this pool was being used by the novice swimmers, we needed a larger area. And so the solution, I guess, was to make a swim in this lake. As you can see, there are lanes and there are starting blocks, and so it wasn't very pleasant to begin with because you know we have this lake where we can't see the water, we can't see the fish inside it, we can't see the snakes. And there were many conspiracy theories about how the lake was infested with algae and snakes. And so we were kind of scared for our lives, and the lighting wasn't good. So we always used to complain about the facilities and how they were not well suited for swimmers. But I think all that changed when Partho sir walked into our lives. So it was just one fine evening when our parents had pushed us to go to swim, and we were playing with this plastic bottle, playing football on the badminton court. And then we see this man walk in, and the first thing he told us was to sit down, and he gave us sheets of paper, and then he gave us pens, and he told us to write why we came to swim. That was really strange because we normally expect this in classrooms where you're supposed to write and supposed to explain why you do something. But then at the end of it, Pastor sir took in all the responses, and then he read them aloud. And I personally said that I just came here to keep my body fit and to help keep my mind fresh. But I think the answer which he was looking for is that people want to come and compete against other swimmers to be the best in each race you swim. So that was kind of like a changing perspective in my mind, because I never thought of this before, as in I come here to swim to win. That was a totally new perspective, and it was a very goal-oriented perspective which Parthas have brought to the table at ILSS. And the days following that, he used to keep motivating us with the illusions of districts, states, and nationals, which we never imagined before. And he always used to bring laptops, presentations, and he used to explain swimming to us in a very technical manner, which again was very foreign to us. We expected these presentations all in classrooms. And so that kept us motivated, and gave us an enormous sense of awe for Sir, for bringing such things to the club and making us want to be better versions of ourselves. And so the journey from being nothing to being state and district swimmers wasn't achieved over just one season or 1 year. And a year consists of a winter, as you know. And and we swam in a lake which didn't have any warming facilities as such. And Partha sir used to make us swim in this lake, and at the time we used to hate it because we used to see sir in the jacket keeping warm, and we used to swim in the cold water. It was 10 degrees Celsius, and there I think that my team played a very important role, because I always knew that my friends were going through the same thing which I was going. And every day before class, we used to discuss that, oh, look at the temperature, it's now 15 degrees. I don't think sir's gonna make us swim in this cold weather. And every single day we used to be disappointed, because sir would invariably say, okay, now our land training is done, let's move to the water. But I think the changing room and the locker room discussions is what kept me motivated to keep swimming in the cold water. And he used to keep us motivated by telling us about districts and states and nationals, and how the other elite level swimmers in our country used to train. And then I like to bring up another point about what happened during nationals, which really solidified the belief in me to do well. So it was my first nationals, which I went in 2013, I think. It was in Goa. And sir was also there. And it was my 50-meter race, and I was very, very scared, because it was obviously my first national, and I hadn't even swum the heat before. And so I was really, really tensed, and my muscles were cramping up, and I used to make excuses to sir, saying that, sir, my muscles are paining, what can I do, how will I swim? But he stayed with me, and he even massaged me. He massaged my hands, he massaged my legs, and even though it might not seem that much, it gave me the confidence that sir believed in me, that sir made an investment in me, and sir toiled through all the practices, trying to make me a better person, trying to make me a better swimmer. And that belief in myself, that motivation, was the strongest impulse I think anyone can feel, that you're doing something not for yourself, but something bigger than you. So this was my motivation going into the Goa Nationals after that gesture from Sir. And I got the bronze medal there, and I was very ecstatic because I never thought of winning a medal at Nationals, let alone going to Nationals itself. So I think that demonstrates where like the coach-student bonding plays a very important role in a swimmer's life, because once you know that the coach supports you, the coach believes in you, and the coach has invested so much, he's made so many efforts, he's battled through so many lapses in facilities, you get an intrinsic motivation to do well. And as many people lack for, like the lack of facilities which we had at the lake. But now looking back at it, I think the only facility which we lacked initially was a good coach, which we got. And so that was the basic facility that we need, and which I think all of you should have this mindset that facilities don't play that big a role. Of course, good facilities uh, do encourage better swimmers, but I don't think facilities define a swimmer. Just as I've achieved all my biggest achievements from swimming in the lake and going through the hardships, and that's made me a better man, I think. So I like to bust that misconception of facilities being directly proportional to performance. So then I'd like to move on to the balance in my academic life and my swimming career. So while all this was going through in my life, while I was training in the lake, I also kept my academics up, and my school was very supportive in this because my school had a very rich swimming culture. So we used to have these swimming competitions at school, and I was part of this school swimming team, and we grew very close to each other. We used to help out each other in the pool, and we had a strong studying group. So, and uh, needless to say that my teachers at school supported me wholeheartedly because they knew that I was investing time in both swimming and academics, and I managed to keep up both. So I think they were very impressed with me per se, and then uh, that was also good in a sense. But later I found out that uh, they entrusted me too much, and so I had gotten some leadership roles in the school, which was uh, which was pretty new for me. And seeing all the previous teachers in my past life, I thought it was a good opportunity to impart what I had as part of my knowledge to my juniors. So that was a good learning experience for me. And balancing all this was uh, comes down to time management. So time management involves a lot of planning and the implementation of the planning. And so for that, I think when you're juggling so many things, you need a good support system. And I found that in my parents, who were very supportive in everything I did, and they kind of handled the logistics, and they always stayed with me through the harsh decisions which I made. And they were never didactic, as in they didn't tell me to, do this thing and not do that thing. They gave me a couple of options, and they let me choose what was best for me. So I think they encouraged a very positive atmosphere in my house, which uh, made it easy for me to confide in them whatever troubles I was having. And so I think that's the main part of time management, as in talking to someone else about how you want to manage your time. And I would at this point I would also like to bust a growing myth among swimmers, which says that if you're a swimmer, you invest so much time in swimming, you can't be good students, which I think is completely baseless because my dad is a doctor and he always likes to put the medical side of things before making me understand things. So he told me that swimming is a bodily exercise, so it encourages blood circulation in the body, right? And the mind is and the brain is also a part of the body, right? So it increases the blood circulation in the brain, which helps us concentrate our focus in a very short period of time. And I learned this very recently from a very famous show called Money Heist, that uh, the human brain can concentrate only for, let's say, a very short amount of time. The amount they said in the serial was 50 minutes. And with swimming, if you have more blood circulation than brain, you can focus your time, you can focus your efforts in that 50 minutes. And the 50 minutes which you have, the others have the same 50 minutes to concentrate their focus. So in the sense, what I'm trying to say is that you have 50 minutes and you spend the other time swimming. The people who are not swimming also have those 50 minutes to concentrate, because they can only concentrate and learn stuff in those 50 minutes uh, of focus, right? So it's not like you're losing time. You have the same amount of time. You just can't waste that time. And I always like to think of this as in a positive way, by thinking of swimming as a break from studying, and then studying as a break from swimming. So you keep getting these two alternating breaks, so your mind remains fresh. And I think that helps you focus better on studies. And that I think was the formula which I used to follow throughout my school life, which has kind of shaped the person I am. So I think I'd like to end that answer with that.
Thank you, Anurag. Uh, uh, I know that you have studied in La Martinia, which is a very esteemed school in Calcutta and one of the most renowned school in Calcutta. And it comes with a lot of study pressure also, and you also need to do a lot of tuitions, I
Mhm.
guess. So how do you manage your tuition time, your study time, your training time, and as you said, your parents were very supportive, but overall, you have to manage the time. Can you explain us how you used to manage your daily routine?
Okay, so for sure. But before that, I like to preface what I say by saying that I'm going to give you some hard truths which might not be easy to take and might not sound that good, but those are the things which I followed in my life, which worked well for me. So the first thing which comes to mind is, so when you're at school, when you talk to your peers and your peers tell you that they haven't started studying for the test, which is 2 months away, that doesn't mean it's an excuse for you also to not start studying, because you have two very, very different lives. Your peers lead a very different life, and you lead a very different life. You have to balance two things at once. And there's no point cribbing about it, because I assume if you've tuned into this talk, you're student athletes and you've made this choice. You've made this choice to have a tough life. You've made this choice to have a tough life, and you're balancing both the things. But at the end of it, I think after having this tough life, you can always sense a feeling of happiness, which uh, which I don't think your peers can fully experience. Uh, so the same concept of abstaining yourself from activities goes to parties and video games too, because you can't go to each and every party your friend throws, because I know your peers might have numerous parties, numerous birthday parties, and they do have the time to spend some time to, you know, talk to some other people, engage in a social space. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't engage in a community, you shouldn't talk to your friends, but you need to make some hard choices regarding which parties you uh, go to, and that those were some tough decisions which I had to make, which didn't always please my friends. But as a student athlete, I think you have to deal with that. And the next point I think is that academics and sports always run together in some sense. So you cannot put something at a higher priority than the other thing. So you can't put swimming as a higher priority at one point of your life, and then studies and let studies take over the priority right before the exams. Because the thing what will happen is that, say you've just finished the semester, right? And now the school has just started in its new academic year, and you have no pressure to study because the exams are 3-4 months away. So you focus entirely on swimming, you attend too many practices at once, and then just before the exams, you start to panic because you haven't started the syllabus, right? So in that sense, you might have to take a longer gap you might have to take a gap from swimming 1 month before the exam just so that you can finish the syllabus on time. And that is not very effective, because all your life you've swum and you've studied. If you take away swimming, you're studying all the time, which won't help you at all. I've seen some of my friends try it. Some of my friends have taken a month before the exam as a break, and they haven't had the most successful results just because they haven't had the break which swimming entitled them to have. So what I'd suggest is that you start with the syllabus right when the school starts with it. You keep up with the school space. You learn the stuff in the classroom itself, because you can actually learn a lot in the classroom itself if you just pay attention to the teacher and learn it just for once, instead of going back home and then going to another tuition to understand what went on in class. Because school is essential. You have to go to school. You can't avoid that. But what you can avoid is the number of tuitions you go to. You can just go to the essential tuitions which you have by understanding most of the stuff in the classroom itself. So I think that's an effective time hack which you can keep for yourself. Another point which I used to come across very often was that my exams and my competitions used to, clash a lot of times. When you have exams at the same time you have competitions, and at that point of time you have to come up with a decision for yourself. And I used to always consult my parents regarding this, but the final decision came from me. They used to report out like the pros and cons of attending an exam or attending a competition. But in the end, it all came down to me. And I'd like to share a short anecdote of what once happened to me during States. So it was during my senior year in high school, when I was applying to the colleges abroad, and they had a lot of entrance examinations, like the SAT subject test. And unluckily, I had my SAT subject test right when I had the States. So that was a very hard decision for me to make. Luckily, I had all my exams on one single day. And on the state meet, I didn't have an event on that day. And so I had to go to States the previous day. I swam my event. Then I came back to Calcutta. The States was happening in another village, which was around 5 to 6 hours driving. So
and pretty hot that time, I guess.
After I finished the event, I came back to Calcutta. I took my exams, and on the same day, I went back to, the town where the competition was happening to swim my next event. So, I mean, it wasn't that hard of a decision, because I could do both of them at the same time. But I've had other occasions where I had to give up some of my exams and just go for a competition, because that happened for me when I went for the India camp, which was happening at Pune. So I had missed the complete set of half-yearly exams in class 9. And so that was a decision which I made right before going. I knew the pros and cons, and I made the conscious decision of attending camp instead of studies. And I never regretted it. I never cribbed about what could have happened and what would have happened. So after you take a decision, just stick to it. The next thing I'd come to is that, so always taught me the value of smart work. So, and I'm sure you've seen many memes about this on the internet also, of how smart work is always better than hard work. And I've experienced the same at Harvard also, where one of my courses taught me that you shouldn't look at yourself relative to your peers, but you should see yourself relative to yourself after the course, as in how much you improved. And I think there are some specific smart work techniques I would like to share with you with regards to academics. So the first point which was very useful to me, the first technique which I always used, was to schedule my time. Before starting the day, I write down the things which I want to achieve in academics. Say I want to read one chapter of geography, or say I want to read one chapter of history. I write that down. I won't put any specific time constraints regarding that, but I just write that down in a diary of mine. And at the end of the day, I'd see which goals I'd achieved. If I'd achieved the goal of, doing the history chapter, then I'd take it off. And that instilled a sense of accomplishment in me and also helped me stay on track. And I think that is a very important part of a student athlete, because you're doing so many things throughout your day. So you might lose track of some things which you might want to accomplish in the day, and then you forget about it in the evening, and then it moves on to the next day. So it keeps adding up towards the end. But if you keep a constant flow, of studying, say, for even 1 hour, concentrating on each subject for 10 minutes, just looking over the stuff which was gone over the previous day, and then looking ahead of what the teacher might teach, then you inherently become more receptive to what is being taught the next day in class, and so you don't waste that much time, right? Um, so those were the most effective strategies which I think worked for me to, balance studies, swimming, and tuitions. And needless to say, you have to multitask at some points, because at one point of time the car became my changing room, because I used to go from my tuition to directly to swimming, and I used to wear my they had a specific uniform which I was wearing, so I had to change into my swimming attire, and all that happened in the car itself. So, needless to say, you might have to make some compromises regarding your privacy in the car, I guess. But I mean, all in all, uh, yeah, that was basically my spiel on how you have to handle all three sides of your life.
Thank you, Anurag. I would like to know this, the difference between your student life here and student life in Harvard, not only in terms of education, but I'd
I,
love to know in terms of education, your sport, and your personal life. Would you like to highlight that?
for sure. So one of the reasons why I kind of chose to go to the US was because they had so many options with regarding which courses I want to pursue, which field of study I wanted to pursue, and it gave a lot of academic freedom. So in school, what happened was in class 11, you get one single choice of, say, choosing science or commerce or economics. But at Harvard, you can do everything at once. Say, you can study computer science and you can study humanities at once. You can tailor your own, learning experience of what you want your university life to entail, what you want to learn from the university. So I found a lot of, academic freedom at Harvard with regarding uh, course selection, because at one point of time I was taking this course about ethics, and then at the same time I was taking a course with regards to computer science, which is never really possible in school. And it's a lot more concrete at the school level, where you're given a set of courses, and you must follow it whether you like it or not. Not that I'm saying that it's a bad technique, but it reduces the freedom in classrooms. Uh, and so the next point which I want to highlight regarding the life in the US was how open professors are to your questions. So they have something called office hours in the US, where you can just go to the professor's office and talk to him regarding life. It doesn't have to be regarding the subject matter. You can just talk to him about what you had for lunch, how things were different in the US. So just talk about life, which I found was uh, very new, because I never had this sort of connection with the professors, where you can talk to your professor about anything and everything, and they're very open to everything with a very non-judgmental platform. Uh, so the professors are always very open, and I like to share just one other picture of my favorite course at Harvard last semester. Uh, Give me 1 second. So this was the CS50 course, which was an introduction into computer science, and they had a very large classroom, right? But they always encourage this interactive measure of bringing in the students in what you discuss and what you teach, and having them sort of try and explain the thought process. So I think that's a very cool way to explore your own thinkings and share with them with the class. In this one, I was just volunteering to show an example for a problem, and which I recommend you all watch too. So it's a shameless plug, but it's all on the internet where you can see this video and take this class if you want to. Uh, and yes, that was mostly on the academic side. And apart from that, I think I don't. So I know at Glenmark you all have this residential program where you stay at the hostel itself. But for me, I grew up in my house and I used to attend day school. So it was a very radical change in my freedom abroad, because I could come into my dorm whenever I wanted to, whether it be at 3 a.m. at night or uh, after having dinner at 7 p.m. So the freedom was huge at universities, where you're free to do anything and everything you can, if everything you want. But that also puts a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, because then again, when you don't have anything structured, then it's your own responsibility to structure your time well, keep some time apart for studies and other part apart for social life, which I think was made easier because I used to follow that same schedule in Kolkata also, and that's what swimmer and athletes' life entails, where you have a very scheduled day. So even though there was a change in the amount of freedom I had, it didn't really change the way I looked at things, I want to say. Uh, and then moving on to sports. So uh, in in India, I had this school schedule where I was also preparing for the IIT at one point. So I had to cut down on swimming in class 11 and 12 a little bit. So I couldn't engage in swimming as much, and I was mostly engaged in the academic side of things and studying for the JEE mains. But at Harvard, I got to explore more of my passions. I used to play tennis in Kolkata in class 6 and 7, and I never got the chance again because of my packed schedule. But at Harvard, I got to explore that because they have very open club culture, where you have club tennis, club swimming, where you can go anytime and anywhere and just play with someone else and explore your passions. So I think I got to explore more of the things which I wanted to do in Calcutta, but I didn't get the chance to do. Uh, and with respect to swimming, I didn't join the top level, the varsity level, but I did used to do club level swimming, where we used to have more or less daily practices, where the club captain actually set the practice for us, and it was a very close-knit community, and we used to have lunches and dinners together. It was a very good social space to be in, is what I'm getting at. And obviously, it goes without saying that at an international institution like Harvard, you get to meet a lot more people from other countries. Also, you get to learn more about their cultures, the way they approach things, their mindsets, and how they're so radically different from the way I used to think. They're much more open to collaboration. There's no sense of jealousy, or there's no sense of trying to put down someone else. They're always ready to help, let it be the professors or your friends. So it's a very supportive environment, I'd say, and I've loved Harvard thus far. But unfortunately, this semester got cut short because of COVID-19, and I'm not sure if we're going to have the next semester also. So I'm looking forward to being back on campus, whenever that may be.
Okay, Anurag, thank you for the wonderful presentation. So we'll come up with few of the questions of the people who are attending this seminar.
For
So
sure.
I would like to request Vijay Bharadwaj, our operation head, to join me, please, if possible. So we'll put some question. So a few of the question has already been answered. Like Smita madam has asked that what kind of swimming, what level of swimming you're doing, or are you following your passion? So one other question the parents want to know that what are the strategy to reach Harvard or be part of Harvard? What are the steps one should go apart from swimming and academics? Do they need to have any other qualities? So if you would like
So
to explore that.
that's a tricky question to answer, which can't be answered in one word or in the time period what I have. But I'll try to answer it best to my ability. So I think for if you're talking about U.S. colleges, there are two basic ways of approaching the application process. So either you can go down the road which most students go down, where you just normally apply, and then there's another athlete recruitment program which they have. So, say you're a very good athlete, if you're a very good swimmer in the country, and you think you might have a chance to fight it out against the best swimmers from around the world, and if the institution can spot your talent, and if they think your timings are good enough, then they could probably recruit you uh, based on your swimming alone. So obviously, you have to have a basic level of academics. It's not like you can fail your classes and still get into uh, institutions. But if you have a very good enough timing, and if you show enough passion, and if the university is able to spot your talent, then you can get in through an athlete recruitment process, where you're solely admitted based on your based on your swimming ability. But I didn't choose that path because I made a decision in class 11 that I wanted to pursue academics as my main passion. So, and in class 11, I was in a very confused state of mind because I was also trying for, the IITs and stuff. And in class 12, my school played a very big role in uh, how I approached the US process, because it was my class teacher and my principal and the swimming coach there, who also was named Mr. Parthu Datta. They kind of convinced my parents that it would be a good opportunity for me to, get the exposure in the US to other cultures. So I think the main thing which colleges look at in the beginning is academics. If you're going through, the student path, not the athlete recruitment program. So the main thing they look at is academics. You must have a very strong academic background, and then comes in the other extracurricular activities. So for me, I think the main one was swimming, but I also had many leadership positions in school, and was also part of the. I also got many scholarships from other third-party uh, sources and examinations which I sat for. So on the academic side, I was pretty strong, and so basically the main thing they look at is academics, and then how much you can add on to that using your extracurriculars. So if you're obviously a good swimmer, that helps a ton. If you've won an international medal, or let's say you've excelled a lot in swimming, but at top institutions, maybe that's not enough, because there are several people say there's a guy who's very good in academics and then he's also very good in basketball. So how can they separate the two of you? So for that, I think it's helpful to just explore your passions and see what you're really interested in. That may be just organizing an NGO, but you should be very passionate about it, or maybe just joining another team, exploring your passions in maths or economics or anything, basically. Just to show yourself that you just don't have you're not two-dimensional, as in you don't have two passions, and that probably should be like like I can't guarantee you that even if you have these qualities, you will be selected, because the admission process looks at your essays also, and the essays also play a very important role, where they they kind of look into your mind and how you think about things. So all in all, it's a very complicated admission process, and I recommend going through the internet, because that was my first source of reference for these sort of things. Yeah, so basically that was my spiel on things. Yeah.
Okay, Anurag. So there is one question which is linked to the US admissions. I don't know whether you will be comfortable in answering this, but there's some people who wanted to know about your academic performances in terms of your SAT scores, your subject SAT scores, and school grades and things like that. Again, I leave it to you whether you want to make this information public or no.
Okay, it's a demanding school in Calcutta, and I made the decision very late as to whether I wanted to, apply to the US, because, as I said, my class teacher and my principal and my swimming coach actually convinced my parents. So I began this admission process very late, which I won't recommend any of you doing if you want to apply abroad. Where I took all of my exams in my senior year in class 12. So I took my ACT and my SAT subject test, and maybe I wouldn't like to publicly announce like the explicit grades which I got, but I just like to say that I took one attempt at each of the exams, and I got a satisfactory. I was satisfied enough with my grade to not have to take it again. So, what some people do is that they take an initial ACT exam in, say, ACT or SAT exam in class 11, and if the result is not good, they can again take the exam again. But for me, I did. I think, in my opinion, I did reasonably well. So I didn't have to take another shot at it. And as for my school grades, I think I did reasonably well in my ICSE and ISC exams. And the thing which colleges look at is consistency. So I think I performed well on all my exams, right from class 9, 10, class 11, and class 12, which is far more important than just say doing well on one particular exam. Uh, because students often realize in class 12 that they really need these good grades to go into top universities. And so they usually have a very good score, say in class 12 in the ISC, but that doesn't really affect it that much unless you have the consistency from all your previous classes, because the US process is very holistic, in which they look at the entire academic performance right from class 9. And just another bit of information which might be helpful is that my principal, after my ISC results, he informed me that I was in the top 1% of the entire country with regards to the marks I got in my ISC. So even though I know it's not a specific tangible number which you might want, but I'm not too comfortable with sharing my like explicit marks. So
Absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. So I'm asking you one more question, which was regarding your swimming. It says, at the matter of priorities, where does swimming stand in your life, and how much do you train right now?
So, as I said, I was involved with the swimming committee for a very long time. So it's not easy for me to just measure it and discard it from my life. But at Harvard, it's really tough to balance academics and swimming, because the course load is quite hefty, and you have to devote enough time to your academics to do reasonably well in the Harvard tests. And so it's not as intense as it was in, say, class 9, 10. But I'd say that I've been in touch with swimming by staying involved with club swim. I go to practice around 5 times a week, and there are some other gym sessions too. Specifically, this year I also attended some competitions in other universities, and I came third in one of the competitions held in another university in the University of Connecticut. So I'd say that competitive swimming has been such a big part of my life. I cannot give that up. And I think at this point, I'd just like to share a small image of the swimming team at Harvard, who I've grown very close to. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, so this was my swimming team, and this we had gone to UConn to participate in a competition. So I still say that swimming is a very big part of me, and it just comes right under academics. in the list of my priorities. Even though it's not at the level of varsity level, because at the varsity level, at Harvard especially, they train for the Olympics, and that's too much of a time commitment for me as an engineering student who's pursuing, say, computer science, because it's it's a large time drain. So I'm continuing it as best as possible, even though if it's not at the highest level possible.
Wonderful. First of all, Anurag, thanks that in spite of you, I mean, having your exams right now, you've taken out time to come and address us. I'm going to ask you a final question. There are two questions actually. One was, at what point of your career did you decide that you will focus more on your international universities? I mean, appearing for competitive exams for international university. And the second question for Smita ma'am, which she's asking is, what do you mean by full scholarship? So these are two things. If you can just answer, we could then finish this. Thank you.
For sure. So coming to the first question of when I started this international application, as I said in my previous talk about how in class 11 I made the decision to focus more on my academic side because I was so interested in the sciences. So I usually initially I went down the IIT path, where I was going all out in my preparation for the JEE Advanced and the JEE Main examinations. So that made up most of my class 11. And there was a radical change in class 12 because of my, I'd say because of my multiple talents in high school. My principal and my teachers in school in general identified me as a sort of person who would benefit from the exposure outside, and I'd have more opportunities to explore my passions. So that was when there was a PTM in school where my dad met my class teacher, and she kind of convinced him by saying that Anurag might do well by going to the US and having the exposure there and meeting more people. So the decision to apply abroad was taken in class 12. Usually people keep the international one as a background, as a plan B. But for me, it became the plan A in class 12, where I had to take multiple exams like the SAT and the ACT. So for SAT, I took 3 subject tests, and for ACT, I just took the main ACT exam. And it was a very concentrated period of time where I had to focus on the international exams and schoolwork. So I would obviously not recommend any of you to follow what I did. So if you're asking for any advice from me, I'd say decide as early as possible. Let's say class 11 of what you want to do, if you want to go abroad or if you want to stay in India, because I know there are many opportunities in India itself where you can get sports quota for swimming, or you can get into very prestigious universities even in India if you don't want to go abroad. And even if you try to go abroad, I'd say you should always keep a plan B, because going to abroad has multiple hidden costs and costs you cannot always foresee. And I was very lucky to have this scholarship, which helped me actually to go to the US. Otherwise, I'd have to stay in India because of the extravagant costs. So I'd always say that you should always keep a plan B. And my plan B was, the IIT examination, which I was keeping on the back burner when I was applying abroad. So even if I hadn't made it abroad, I would have probably taken the JEE Main this year, or taken a gap year and studied harder to take it the next year. And so coming to the next question about the scholarship. So because universities have these extravagant costs, some universities always try to minimize the cost to the students itself, so that education doesn't come at a cost. That's what their motto is. That's what they try to make it as. And most universities will have this sort of a sort of scholarship program. but but there are a lot of multiple hidden complex situations which you might encounter, which I came across using the internet, where some colleges aren't always so welcome of international scholarships, and mostly the top institutions usually want international students to come in and be a part of their diverse class, and for that they have like these financial aid packages. Some universities have these financial aid packages where they decide on your merit and your family background and your condition as to how much aid you would require to go into the university. So first, some colleges look at you, see if you're a good fit. If you're a good fit, then they'd start deliberating on how much you need to actually come to the university, because as we all know, most of us can't afford to pay $70,000 per year to just go to a university abroad. So they look at how much money you would require as to successfully have a successful life at the chosen university, and whether it will be worth investing in you. So those are the basic two factors which play a big part in the US admission process. And I'd say that if you're applying for a scholarship, it obviously affects your chances of getting in. So it's not always a very easy process to I decide to go to the US and I'll surely get an admission package. That's not always the case, and I recommend going through the websites to clarify what they classify as financial aid and how much each university is going to sponsor you. So the research is a very important part, which goes into which colleges you select, because I didn't apply to that many institutions because I had to go through each and every university to see how much money they could give the students. And so I'd say it's a very complex process to approach, and you should definitely start early if you plan to go abroad.
Thank you so much, Anurag, for sharing all the details and your pathway of reaching excellence both in sport and your study. It was a pleasure hearing you, and I'm sure all our parents and swimmers would love to know how to balance, and they can actually balance and reach excellence in both. With that note, I think we can end our meeting today.